Dermos threw the switch to leave the drift, and the ship's heat gauge chirped happily at the prospect of cooling down. Suddenly surrounded by the inky blackness of real space, Dermos checked the scanners. Seeing nothing, he deployed his radiator and shut his eyes. Red-hot spools of wire spun out from the hull of his battle-scarred little tug. As the ship drifted lazily in space, the heat began to dissipate through half-kilometre-long slivers of conduction. Dermos always imagined his ship must look a bit like a dragonfly when the radiator was out. Sailing the drift is hot, and there's no way to get rid of that heat except to stop and wait. As any good smuggler knows, this is when you're most vulnerable. Any good pirate, too. Suddenly, a slug of metal snapped the spool of wire at incredible speed. Alarms blared in the cockpit, jolting Dermos awake. He couldn't run or fight. It was too hot. He flipped on his comm. "To the pirate out there who just knocked out my radiator, I surrender. Let's talk." His only answer was the heat gauge slowly starting to rise. They must have a microwave emitter. Dermos realizes if he can't think of anything, he's about to be cooked. Hello, and welcome to The Bad Spot, an actual play podcast where I, Matt Risby, and I alone am playing through Ironsworn Starforged. This week's tale from the drift was from the delightfully named Brynden Rivers Esquire, and I want to extend my sincerest thanks to him for submitting a frankly superb piece of flash fiction. And that detail of needing to cool down your ship's radiator after jumping through the drift, and the problems that that may lead to, is a very cool one, and I like it very much, and let's face it, I'm probably going to steal that at some point. If you want to roll some dice and write something for me to read at the beginning of a future episode, then the submission guidelines and contact details are on screen now. Whilst I have you, why don't you leave a like, subscribe, and click the little bell icon so you can follow along with the campaign each and every week. Last week, Luna finally came face to face with the Soulbinders, who were, how is the best way to describe this? A bunch of very creepy ancient dudes being kept alive by life support spacesuits. Each Soulbinder has a shadow, which is a much younger person with mystic abilities and black iron embedded into their flesh, who follows them closely. The shadows appear to be using their powers to assure the captives of Sepulchre's subservience. There is also a heavily armed and elaborately armoured detachment called the Vanguard, who are keeping watch over the prisoners, who are being slowly rounded up and brought into the hangar. Azrael Vega explains to the Soulbinders that Archer has slipped through their grasp, but in Luna, he ominously states that he has the next best thing. Meanwhile, Archer gets to discover more of the survivors' camp up in the mountains, and this is a mountain outpost built by the ancient civilization. And the outpost is positively teeming with life, including the remnant populations of domesticated cattle and a flock of benign ostrich-like lizard creatures. Life up here is sustainable, but that's all this existence is. Archer and Cole go over what was salvaged from the wreckage of the Rockhopper and find two short-range reconnaissance drones in working order, but without power. Archer hatches a plan in which he will try and charge the energy cells for these drones using the tremendous power of the Arc Dragons. This plan involves using an empty shell from one of the armadillo rat crabs as bait on the end of a rope. The shell is fitted with conductor rods, and the energy cells are rigged inside. Archer and Cole enact this highly dangerous plan at night in the pouring rain, where they manage to lure an Arc Dragon out of the woods and trick it into shocking the bait. Checking it over, the cells are sufficiently charged, but the equipment Archer used to rig it is completely fried, meaning that this is going to be their only shot. Back at the outpost, the drones are used to raise a makeshift platform to which Archer is tethered and flown up to the Iron Gate. And after several attempts, and another vision in which he once again saw the desert and the black glass spire, he manages to activate it. After briefly considering stepping through the gate on his own, Archer thinks better of it and returns to the mountain outpost. On his return, he makes an observation. The ostrich lizard creatures can fly. And this sets Archer's brain racing. So, I thought last week's series of absurd plans couldn't get any more absurd, but here we are. And I think that this can't come like totally out of the blue, right? I think we established last week that in the main building, the Refugio, where Cole and his crew had been living, that there were carvings on the wall. The ancient civilization that built this place had left them, and this ancient civilization had clearly had a very close relationship with the fauna of this planet, and they'd left their stories on the wall in these relief carvings. And I think that that is where we are going to find Archer and Cole, looking over the stone, looking at clear, detailed carvings showing the relationship between man and beast very clearly, showing human figures living alongside and living with many great beasts, including riding these flying ostrich lizards. And it's safe to assume that Cole and his crew have seen these, right? Like they've been here for more than 2 years. They've studied every inch of this place. So the question this poses is, have they already tried to ride these things? Like they must have done, right? Like out of boredom, if nothing else. But I suppose their introduction to the wildlife of this planet was pretty traumatic. So I wouldn't blame them if they hadn't tried it. Should we ask the Oracle? Do we need to ask the Oracle? I don't think we do. Should we just say that they've definitely tried to ride these things, but maybe should we say that it just wasn't successful? Maybe, I don't know, one of the crew was seriously injured in a fall, maybe. Does that sound like something that would happen? Yeah, let's say that, because if you were trapped on a planet for this long, you'd have at least tried it, right? And that's what we're going to say. Having studied all the available evidence, Cole's crew have actually tried to ride these creatures, but after a costly accident, they gave up. And it's not something they would have persisted with, right? Because they got nowhere to go. Like, the Iron Gate wasn't active, so they wouldn't have just tried to fly up there. And, I don't know, let's say that the reconnaissance drones, when they did go out on their initial surveys, they didn't report back particularly positive news. Maybe this mountain range is really the only safe place to be. Like, the only place that is kind of safe from giant monsters that don't pose some massive threat to their survival. Essentially, this crew are stranded and ill-equipped to deal with life on this planet, and being able to ride or fly around on these lizards just hasn't been something that would have helped them. Until now. So obviously this is the only solution, right? This is the only way to get up there and through the gate. It's that, or one by one they take the drone lift that they fashioned in the last episode and step through. But what if the drones get pulled through the gate as well? And where are they actually going? Where, if this plan actually works, is Archer taking them? I said last week that Archer seems to instinctively kind of know that since becoming part of the network, he knows that he can somehow navigate to places that he has already been. And he feels like he can do that fairly straightforwardly. So where does he know that there's a gate that he's already been? It's just Sepulchre, right? And that's it. That's the only one. And I want to state something here. I kind of thought about this that I feel like might not have been clear, but I'll clear this up now, is that the gate on Sepulchre is the gate from Paxton Hold. The clan Thorn, straight up just excavated it and moved it to Sepulchre. I did hint at it, but I kind of didn't know if it was 100% clear, so I just thought I'd kind of spell it out for those in the cheap seats. And yeah, they moved it up there, and we saw the effect of just having part of a gate on the derelict, the Griffin Institute derelict. We saw the effect that had on the crew. There was all that kind of weird temporal distortion and all kinds of problems caused by that. So, yeah, that might be a problem. Where else? Where else does Archer know of a gate? Well, there's the one the professor disappeared through, right? But I think we said really early on the Griffin Institute kind of covered all that up, and I think that they would have either destroyed the gate or, you know, removed it as part of their cover-up, as part of their efforts to sweep the whole nasty business like under the carpet. So really, Archer really only knows his way back to Sepulchre with any degree of safety, and he left that place in a state of absolute bedlam, in absolute chaos, with a prison escape happening and banner sworn everywhere, and then the junk fleet turning up, and like he doesn't even know about the Soulbinders being there. So, I mean, it's been a few days. It's been like 3 or 4 days that he's been stuck on this planet, and I think that he's hoping that maybe it's all blown over. He's kind of hoping that maybe Luna has escaped, and that maybe the junk fleet have defeated Clan Thorn, and maybe they've taken control of the place. But this is a lot of maybes, right? But what is the alternative? What's the alternative? Like, go through the gate and hope they'll come out of a random gate somewhere else safely? Like, this one that he came through was floating in the sky above a planet populated by terrifying electric dinosaurs. What if Archer leads them to a random gate, they take their chances, and what if they come out in deep space? What if they come out at the bottom of the ocean or above an active volcano? Like, Archer is basing his ability to navigate the gates on what's essentially just a hunch, which is uncomfortable territory for him. He really doesn't like that. But just choosing a gate and hoping for the best, that seems like a risk not worth taking. So returning to Sepulchre, not knowing what might await them when they arrive, is somehow the safest option. So that is what Archer is suggesting they do. And having been stood in the Refugio studying the carvings with Cole, he has explained all this and pitched it to the crew. And that pitch is, if they survive flying through a gate on a flock of lizards, then the only place that he can reliably get them might be a war zone. As prospects go, it doesn't feel that appealing, really. Which, actually, talking of war zones, like, that's actually a good question. Like, are these peacekeepers equipped for a fight? Like, they're peacekeeping troops who were out responding to a distress call, so I think they probably would have taken weapons with them, but they're peacekeeping troops, so are they all non-lethal weapons? We know they have non-lethal weaponry because they shot Archer with it a few times, actually. But is that all they have? Do you know what? I think it kind of must be, right? Because if they had regular lethal type weapons, they could have just marched down to the grasslands and just bazookaed an Arc Dragon into oblivion. But that clearly didn't happen. So, yeah, I'm going to say that they are mainly equipped with non-lethal weaponry. I think maybe they do have some actual lethal weaponry, but maybe limited ammo, maybe, or limited capabilities, or limited numbers. So they are generally mainly armed with non-lethal weaponry. So when they turn up at Sepulchre, if they make it through the gate, and if Archer can find his way back there, they are going to be armed pretty much with non-lethal weaponry. So they can throw down, but in really a kind of a limited way. So, yeah, that might not be again, the most appealing of prospects to turn up to what is a Clanthorn stronghold, holding basically stun batons and weird paralyzing goo guns. Yeah, so this is what Archer has pitched to the survivors, that taking them into a Clanthorn stronghold armed only with non-lethal weaponry on a flock of flying lizards is the safest option. And I think the Peacekeepers are understandably wary of this, but they are also just kind of worn down by just existing in this place, by just barely surviving. What Archer is suggesting must be better than this. And actually, mentioning the clans, like, were any of the clans we've encountered so far part of the conflict that the Peacekeepers were intervening in? Like, we established there are 5 founder clans, and we've met 3 of them, so it's pretty good odds. And I don't even think that we have to ask the Oracle. I think it's definitely Clanthorn, isn't it? Because Clanthorn have the strongest military. They seem to have a total grip over the sector that we started in the Corvus Breach, so it's not unreasonable that they do in other sectors too. So, yeah, let's just say that the Peacekeepers have seen Clanthorn's military might up close, which I think adds a little bit of narrative frisson to this. So, we've got a plan. We're going to try and learn to fly a flock of space lizards through an ancient alien space portal in the hope that we will arrive in what might be a war zone. It's not the plan that anyone wants, but it's definitely the plan that we deserve. So, what we're going to do to make this happen in game is we're going to make a couple of moves. When thinking about this between episodes, I was wondering if trying to coax these lizards into being our trusty steeds might be compel. Let's have a look at the move. It says, when you try to persuade someone or make them an offer, roll plus, and then you've got some options. There's charm or pacify, there's threaten or lie or swindle, and I think this move could work. We could use kind of heart to kind of gently encourage them into helping us, do a bit of lizard whispering. I don't think using shadow is an option. You can't really swindle a lizard. You just can't. They will not fall for it. And you could threaten it, I suppose. They've clearly been domesticated in the past, which is a process that typically involves coercion. But I think this is going to be compel with heart. Animals are our friends. And if you want to ride one through a mystical space gate into near certain death, then you need to treat them with respect. So before we do a bit of compelling, I think this whole lizard riding business is going to require a bit of groundwork. So first, we're going to make the move secure an advantage. And this is going to represent Archer essentially trying to use a bit of expertise here, a bit of that kind of book learning, a bit of smarts to try and work out like the best way about this. And I think that Archer has kind of spent a lot of time studying these carvings, trying to gain any kind of clue about how this civilization might have domesticated these things and how they might have gone about flying them. And he's also going to apply what he might know more generally about animal husbandry, which is theoretical, I grant you. He's probably read a book about animal husbandry. I mean, we all have. We've all been there, right? And he's going to see how he can apply that to this situation. So this is going to be the move. Secure an advantage using focus, observation, and expertise. So rolling plus wits. A strong hit. On a strong hit, we get +2 momentum and +1 on our next move, which we're absolutely going to need. So momentum first, we're up to 10 now. That is the maximum. A bit of a lopsided look to our tracks here. We have got full health, spirit, momentum, and absolutely 0 supply. So yeah, a bit wonky. So Archer's animal husbandry knowledge is sound. Of course it is. And the relief carvings in the Refugio are actually pretty detailed. And they show in reasonable clarity that the animals were fitted with saddles and harnesses and stirrups, and they had, you know, those things that you kind of hold and they go into the animal's mouth. It's a bit, is it? Or a bridle? A bit? Chomping at the bit. That's the expression, right? Is that a thing? Hang on. Yeah, bridle with reins, you know, horse stuff. So I think that Archer and the crew set out into kind of like fashioning something similar, and like they're not going to be making this stuff with any kind of like saddling skill. What's a person who makes saddles called? Saddle maker? A farrier? Is that what farriers do? It can't be saddler. That doesn't sound like a proper word. Saddle maker. Someone who makes saddles is a saddle maker. That's unimaginative, but there you go. Anyway, they aren't making these harnesses, rigs, saddles with any kind of saddle making skill. They are literally just bodging it together with like strapping and ropes and random bits of furs and anything that they've got to hand. And the lizards are pretty kind of docile creatures. They're kind of affectionate and curious. And they don't mind being approached, and to a degree, they don't mind being handled. But they've got nasty looking claws, these kind of sharp talons that could definitely do some damage. And while they're kind of content to kind of grub around and kind of eat bits of grass and moss and small insects and small rodents or whatever, like they've got short, stubby teeth that will definitely leave a mark if they lay the chompers on you. And I keep referring to these creatures as these creatures, and I think they need a name, because if they're helping us, it's the least we can do for them, I think. And I've had a think about it, and I've had more than a think about it. I'm just going to call them Drakes, because I couldn't think of anything better. That was my placeholder name until I came up with something better, and here we are. I literally have nothing else better than that. It's classic, it works, and I tell you what, if you folks can come up with anything better in the comments below, then, you know, go buck wild, and I'll pick the best one, and that's what we'll run with from next week. But for now, they're called Drakes. So Archer has studied these Drakes. He's spent time bonding with them. He's been doing a spot of Drake whispering and trying to generally get all the other somewhat skeptical crew to do likewise. And I don't personally blame them for being skeptical, because essentially this guy has fallen out of a magic door in the sky and then done nothing but propose an increasingly dangerous series of ridiculous, idiotic plans. But to Archer's credit, they have all worked so far. So I think Cole, and therefore the rest of the crew, go along with it, I guess. Because as far as chances of getting out of here go, this is the best they've got, pretty much. But actually, like, thinking about it, I wonder if anyone doesn't want to go. Like, that's an interesting question. Like, I wonder if there's anyone in the crew that is like, you know what? Like, fishing for arc dragons was one thing. Strapping yourself to a plank and flying up to the gate was another. But this idea, this lizard thing, this is insane. And this is where we draw the line, and we'll take our chances here. Thank you very much. I don't think that's that unreasonable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the Oracle. I'm going to say it's unlikely, but there's a chance that some of the crew don't want to go. So, does anyone refuse to go? 22 is yes. Okay. Interesting. So, maybe, let's say, how many did we say there were? They said there was 12, didn't we? 12 people in the crew. So let's just say that maybe the 12-person crew heard Archer out, and some of them were like, do you know what? Even if this works, we're walking into some real danger on Sepulchre, and that's at best, right? Like, it's almost certain death at worst. And like, I think maybe there's a few of the crew that are like maybe a bit older, and they are perhaps more ground down by years of like being in the thick of conflict, or kind of ground down by years of witnessing the horrors of endless war, just tired, broken people who have heard Archer's pitch and have said, do you know what? Actually, we'd rather live here than die somewhere else. They've seen enough, they've seen enough war, enough conflict, and like enough for a dozen lifetimes, and they would rather stick to the original plan, which is wait it out, stay behind, take their chances that someone will eventually come through the gate, or that maybe Cole or Archer might come back for them somehow. I don't know. Either way, let's say 4 of the 12 crew make that hard decision, and they tearfully decide to stay, and everyone has to accept it, despite how painful that might be to do so. So we've spent quite a bit of time working with the drakes, like working on kind of making them calm and amenable to be at first ridden and then secondly flown. So how did it go? Let's make the move and find out. So let's compel rolling plus heart. And remember, we get a +1 from that advantage that we secured earlier. So rolling plus heart. That's a weak hit. And not only is that a weak hit, there is a 10 there. So burning our maximum momentum will not make that into a strong hit, which is annoying from a game perspective, and gives us a complication narratively. So it says on a weak hit, they'll agree to do what we want, but the agreement comes with an additional demand or complication. Take +1 momentum, which is of no use to us. And yeah, envision what happens. So these drakes making demands. Maybe they've unionized, gone on strike for better work conditions, possibly. Obviously, that's not the case. That's silly. We've treated them very well, with the utmost respect. But let's just say that whilst Archer's plan has worked, let's say that it hasn't been as successful across the board as they had all hoped. And what I'm going to say is that Archer and a few of the others have maybe done really well, and they have managed to convince these majestic creatures into being ridden and also flown. And it's been like a long process. It's like taken 2, maybe 3 days of like building trust with the drakes, slowly encouraging them to be saddled and then to bear the weight of a person. And, you know, despite some kind of initial angry squawking protests, it has worked. Like Archer and Cole and a few of the others have been able to ride the drakes. Ride them at first slowly about the outpost and then more quickly through the mountain pass. And after that trust has been established, like Archer manages to get them to take flight. At first it's short, laboured bursts of flapping and gliding back down to the ground, but as they get the hang of it, Archer manages to get in the air for 10 seconds, for 20 seconds, 30 seconds, slowly getting more and more flight time, and then comfortably and confidently managing to stay in the air longer and longer, gliding through the cold mountain air, getting enough altitude to be level with the gate. And like, the gate is not that far away. This is only a short range flight, which is kind of handy because the drakes can't fly for miles and miles at a time. They're big creatures and they get tired, and Archer respects that and kind of doesn't push them too hard. And this is all well and good, but it hasn't been quite so easy for everyone else. And there's been more angry protests. There's been biting and scratching, and for some of the other drakes who just don't want to be ridden. And it's brought it home that not everyone is going to be able to do this. Not everyone can go. Some of these drakes just aren't having any of it. They are violently refusing to be broken. And that's going to leave a proportion of the crew grounded. Like, there were 12 that initially got pitched this plan, and that became 8 when 4 decided they didn't want to go. And maybe there's only been 4 people who have been able to ride the drakes confidently enough. And Cole has to be one of them, right? Because if Cole has to stay, then none of the other crew are going to follow Archer, right? That's not how that's going to work. But then also, would Cole leave his crew? I think this is actually a very difficult decision for him. It's really hard. Like, these people have waited so long for some way of getting out of here, and now there's this situation where they've got a way out. Albeit it's a risky, very dangerous way out, but it's a way out nonetheless. But they can't all go. This crew has been through everything. They've been through all this, and they can't all go. And now they are fracturing. There's some who don't want to go. They don't want to go like this. This is too much for them. They just can't do it. And then there are others who desperately want to go, but they have not been able to tame the drakes, and they can't. And Archer finds this fracturing of the group heartbreaking to watch. This is like a family, and it is splintering into pieces. Like, throughout the last few days, like, the desperation that they faced when he first arrived has given way to like some kind of optimism, but that has now faded for some and disappeared completely for others. And now we're in a position where most of the survivors, so desperate to get out of here, are going to have to stay behind. And I think that Cole would definitely offer to stay. But what I think is more interesting is that the others actually convince him to go. Like, I think that they know that he will do everything he can to come back for them, to come back and get them. And I think that, yeah, actually, that's actually a pretty solid plan, because if Cole can get back to that gate that's in space that they got sucked through in the first place, then he should be able to get back here, right? And let's say he's got all the navigational data. Remember, like, from a long time ago, like, pilots and ships carry all their navigation data on drives that individuals carry around. So it's, you know, feasible to say that that's survived. He just needs a ship once he gets off here, right? And he should be able to come back for them. Yeah? But that all depends on Archer. And it depends on him because he can activate the gates. Cole and his crew are asking him to help beyond what he's already doing and what he's already done. They are asking that after Archer, Cole, and the other 3 crew members get safely off this planet, that he help Cole get a ship and then get back to that deep space gate, wherever that was, so he can come back for them. And do you know what? I don't think they're just asking Archer. They're asking him to swear an iron vow to do that. And I think that Archer can see the pain and desperation in their faces. And even though he has a pretty full schedule right now, he has only got this far because of the kindness and compassion of others. Like, Luna did not have to save his life so many times. Keelan and Santos did not have to patch him up when he was at death's door. There is some good in this unforgiving universe, and Archer has benefited from that more than most. So for him, this isn't a difficult decision to make. And I don't think we have any active vows running, do we? Do we? Hang on. Tell you what, that please stand by bumper is putting in some work today. We do actually have a vow running. We have this one. Find the lens using the iron gates. So apart from our background vow, we've only got this one running, and I think we'll probably be able to mark some progress on this soon, actually, but we'll come back to that. But other than that, we have got no active vows. So let's take one on. Let's give this a name and a rank. Let's call this Help Cole Rescue the Survivors. That's pretty open, right? That could be getting him safely to the gate and turning it on. And that could actually be coming back here and doing the rescuing himself. And this actually ties quite nicely into our main story, the more I think about it, because if we get back to Sepulchre and if we can get out alive, then we need to find more gates, and preferably ones that aren't in the Corvus Breach, our starting sector, because that's starting to become not really a safe place for us to be. So yeah, I think Archer can totally see the appeal of this. So rank-wise, what's it going to be? I think Formidable. I think Formidable feels about right. So Archer takes out his black iron compass from the chain around his neck and clasps it in his hand. So, let's swear an iron vow, rolling plus heart. Weak hit. Weak hit. Okay, I'm not going to burn momentum on that, because I've got a feeling we might need that later. On a weak hit, you begin your quest with more questions than answers. Take +1 momentum, which we don't need, and envision the way forward. And I think this weak hit just ties into how difficult this all is. This plan was a long shot, and it somehow, inexplicably, was very nearly working. But that optimism and hope has been dashed. They have fallen at the final hurdle, and now only a third of the survivors are leaving. And that third of the survivors is leaving with just the faintest of hopes that they'll somehow survive and come back for the others. And that manifests itself, I think, in Archer swearing the vow and some of the survivors just being too crushed to believe that it's going to happen. So, we have got to go. It's the next morning, and Archer is in the saddle atop his drake, standing between the two stone guardians, watching the sun come up over the valley. And he thinks to himself, this is a beautiful place. A dangerous place, but a beautiful one. And it's perhaps the last moment of serenity, the last kind of moment of calm that he'll have for a while, and he just takes a minute to drink it all in. And after a moment of peaceful, reflective solitude, the others join him, Cole and 3 more from his crew. And they spent their last night with the others in the refugio, what could be the last time they ever see them. And Archer was kind of on the outside, looking in, kind of sitting in his bunk, watching the group enjoy each other's company one last time, watching them swap stories of times past, watching them hug and hold each other. Every gesture, every look is kind of heavy with meaning and poignancy. And Cole's face this morning is kind of set with this grim, stoic determination. He has led this crew, survived with them in this place, this dangerous place that has claimed the lives of many of his crewmates. And now he must abandon some of them, and he must feel like he has condemned them to further struggle to survive, further danger. And Archer can tell that this weighs heavy on the young man's head. He mounts his drake and sallies up beside Archer, and both men look up at the gate in the sky, still glowing white, with a soft peach tint coming from the morning sun. And Cole says, "Well, it was nice knowing you." And Archer smiles before he says to Cole and the others who have now joined him, "Be ready for anything." And he pulls on his mask before he spurs the drake forward. And it lets out a shrill morning call before the others join in. And after a moment, the mountains are alive with the sound of drake song. And Archer and the others gee their steeds along the path, picking up pace, their clawed feet thundering on the ground as they move quicker and quicker toward the cliff edge. Their wings extend, the bright plumage catching the sun as they take flight, and with a few powerful beats of their wings, soar into the air. Archer clings on for dear life. The gate is nearing, and Archer can feel the resonance in his bones. This is it. Once more, into the unknown. He takes a deep breath, draws his pistol, and then there's a flash. And they're gone. Luna is no longer in the hangar. She is being walked down the corridor on the lower level, flanked by armed Bannersworn, with Azrael Vega walking a few meters ahead. She was last here only a few hours ago, when she watched Archer step through the gate and disappear. The gate is no longer glowing as it was then. There is still that low hum that pulses through everything that she can feel in the pit of her stomach, but the bright white light that engulfed Archer has now been replaced by a faint purple-blue glow that fades intermittently. They stop, and Azriel Vega turns to face her. She is shoved to her knees once again. Vega is in total control of the situation. He steps forward, looking down at her, and says, "This is probably your last chance to offer any information you have voluntarily. I know you know things. I've been in here." And he taps a finger against Luna's temple. She recoils at the touch as she thinks back to when Vega controlled her and made her lower the gun. Vega looks off down the corridor behind her, continues, "If you don't feel like volunteering the information we need, then I'm afraid my friends will very much enjoy taking it from you." And Luna says, "I don't know anything. You're wasting your time." And Vega drops down to a stoop, to her eye level, and says, "You've never met anyone like me before, have you? Like the shadows back there. It doesn't matter how brave you are, or how much pressure or pain you think you can withstand. We know the truth. You can't hide it from us. You don't have to pretend." And Luna says, "We stumbled upon a derelict. It was full of the Risen. We fought them. There, you know everything." And Vega shakes his head, laughs softly, and says, "The Soulbinders hunt the dead. This has been going on for eons. These are no spacer's tales or wild-eyed flights of fancy. There is a very real evil creeping slowly throughout the Forge, and there is worse to come. They have seen it, and only one thing can stop it." And he gestures to the gate and says, "These have remained an enigma for many thousands of years. But somehow a simple scavenger has unlocked the secret, acquired some ancient knowledge from where who can tell. But he has found a way to open and use the gates. And without him, we must turn to you." And he gets up and walks away. And that's when Luna feels someone's hands holding her head from behind. And she is suddenly powerless to move. There is a shadow standing behind her. His hands, fused with black iron, are glowing as he holds Luna's head, his fingers splayed across her cheeks. Luna's heart starts to race, and she hears a wooden clunk behind her, followed by another clunk, 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 clunk. The leader of the Soulbinders, the Grand Inquisitor, slowly circles round and stands before her. He walks with two gnarled wooden canes, and every step appears to be a huge effort. He leans forward. Luna can hear his rasping, ragged breaths echoing around his glass helmet. His liver-spotted skin sags as he leans closer. His pale, dead grey eyes meet hers. And then she hears his voice in her head. "Open the gate." And the shadow's grip around her head tightens. "Open the gate." And Luna grits her teeth, and she can feel him searching her thoughts, probing the recesses of her memories. You are strong, but it won't save you. Refusal will lead only to prolonged, profound suffering. Your body, mind, and soul will know only endless torment. Open the gate. I'll do it. And she just cuts him off. I'll do it. I'll open it. And the Inquisitor's eyes narrow. And Luna says, let me go and I'll do it. I can't be restrained. I can't do it like this. And after a second, she feels the hands slip away and she gets to her feet. The Grand Inquisitor steps to one side and two Vanguard in their bronzed, decorative armour escort her slowly towards the gate. And Luna has no idea what she is doing with the gate. Every step she takes towards it, she's weighing up which of her escorts she has the best chance of taking down. If she can get a gun, she can take the other out, then light up the whole corridor. This really is it. This is the end of the line, and she's not going to go out without a fight. She reaches the gate and stops, her boots crunching into the coarse grey dirt beneath her feet. She tries to think of what it looked like when Archer did this. She remembered him making some kind of motion with his hands, but he wasn't touching the gate or working any controls. She didn't understand it, but she starts to slowly make these exaggerated shapes with her hands through the air. And all the time she is just waiting to make her move, to go for the gun, because they're only going to buy this act for so long. She continues to make these motions with her hands, just waiting for one of the Vanguard to take their eyes off her, and then she'll go. Then it will be time. But then something happens that she did not expect. The hum intensifies, almost oppressively, and the pulsing blue and purple glow is slowly replaced by a white light, a light that she last saw Archer disappear through hours ago. What was happening? Had she actually turned it on? Had that worked? Is that all there was to it? It didn't matter really. Whether she had or hadn't, she'd be dead soon. So it was now or never. The light gets slowly brighter, more intense, as the Grand Inquisitor pushes past her, standing only a few meters away from the gate. He raises his arms in praise at this miracle. He's only a silhouette now against the blinding light. And this is Luna's chance. This is her moment. In a heartbeat, she has her elbow jammed into the neck of the Vanguard to her left. She feels a windpipe crunch sickeningly, and then the body goes limp. And before it even hits the ground, she has the gun, this weird, tapered, drummed rifle. And she has it aimed at the other Vanguard, who has barely even noticed what is happening amongst the noise and the light. And Luna squeezes the trigger. The Vanguard in her sights crumples to the ground, the chest plate of their armour caved in. And that's when the shots start coming her way from down the corridor. She dives for cover, pushing herself up against a buttress at the wall. The Grand Inquisitor is still stood at the gate, arms raised, absorbed in this great miracle, seemingly oblivious to the firefight that's raging behind him. And that's when there is an intense flash of white light, and a resounding boom knocks Luna to the floor. Her head rings with tinnitus, and her vision blurs. But as she regains her composure, as things start to come back into focus, she can now see the Inquisitor lying helpless on his back in the dirt, his hand reaching out in front of him, something pinning him down. A pair of large-scaled claws have punctured the armour plating on his chest, and the Grand Inquisitor is being held down by a giant two-legged lizard with a long neck and two bony crested plates running the length of its skull. But there's also someone sitting on its back, holding some reins. That someone is Archer. He sees her and pulls off his mask. He smiles. She smiles too. Luna readies her gun. The lizard shrieks. And then all hell breaks loose. Thank you a million times. Thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe if you have not done so already, and click that little bell icon so you can be notified as soon as the next video drops. I'll be back next week, but until then, it's farewell and safe passage.